a little bit later in life, like in college, I started using blogs a lot and was really just kind of fascinated by this space for kind of identity play and really kind of more emotional work. And so kind of left that behind, and when I started graduate school, I started noticing all these blogs with teenage girls using it in these very similar ways, and so I got very fascinated by kind of the power of anonymity, if you will, to really kind of shed some, I don't know, barriers that a lot of us have in everyday life. And so I ended up doing my master's thesis on girls and blogs, and from there, that was about the same time that Facebook and MySpace and the social media was really taking off with high schoolers, and of course all these kind of moral panics also were coming along with that. And I had just come out of this space of like, wow, girls are doing really amazing things online, and then all this discourse around fear and anxiety, and so that kind of drove me to think like, why there's all this fear, and trying to change some of that discourse away from being afraid, but actually looking at the really pretty amazing, agentive, and empowering ways that girls, and now I also look more at girls and boys, but teens are using these different spaces in their kind of everyday lives. We are in a after-school digital media club that is led by one of the teachers there who also teaches some technology courses. So initially we were in that space, really just hanging out with the kids, seeing what they were doing. While we were there, a second project started that's kind of this, we're calling it the International Film Club. So you had kind of two projects going on, and so we're working with 18 students, about half of whom are involved in the after-school space, and the other half we recruited through other people in the school that aren't necessarily as media production savvy and interested. So we've been observing them in this space and then hanging out with them one-on-one about once a week, and just talking to them about their home life, their friends, their attitudes about school, as well as technology, to really get a sense of how they're using technology to maintain peer networks, but also to learn in ways that maybe traditional school doesn't think of as learning, these kind of informal modes of learning that they're engaging in, and some of them aren't. So kind of trying to figure out who's doing what and why, and how to kind of value what they're doing. It's definitely a student-driven space. The teacher's there to help when he needs to help, but the kids have a lot of agency in deciding what they want to work on and that kind of thing. Peer-driven is really important. Talking about why they come to that space, we get a lot of different answers from, I don't have computer at home, or I don't have internet at home, or I have to share my computer with all my siblings, and so just being there to get to mess around on the computers is, for some of them, they also tell us home is really boring. So it's a space that's, they can go other than home and get to do these things. Of course, their friends are there. A lot of them initially joined because a friend said, hey, you should come. And they went. And turns out they actually discovered this interest and passion for film or photography and media. So just the importance of peers in these spaces, and they learn from each other in this. And so sometimes it looks like they're just goofing off, but really they're sharing ideas or they're figuring things out. Like at first it just kind of looks chaotic when you walk in, or it looks like they're just playing, but there are actually a lot of them working on projects either for school, like so they're doing homework, or their own personal projects. And there's a lot of collaborative projects of, well, I made this film with this friend, and then she wanted me to do this for her, so I'm helping her now. And so it's interesting just how much they're teaching each other in this space. I think the formal classroom doesn't always provide opportunities for them to actually teach each other because the stakes are high, the teacher's at the front. It's just a different environment. Policy is new for me. I really came at this from more of discourses of childhood and the ways in which we kind of construct childhood as innocent and vulnerable, and therefore in need of protection. And so kind of within this modern society, that protection often comes from government, or it's perceived to be from government, that rather than allowing parents and teachers to regulate on their own, the government feels the need to actually step in. And some of these policies are framed as, we have a national problem of teens or children being exposed to predators or being exposed to pornography, instead of constructed as isolated events, or we have a problem of predators. The problem is that teens are being exposed in these spaces. And so policies come in and try to regulate to protect teens or protect children, but also kind of, I think, to protect the institutions from issues of liability and stuff. So I kind of came at policy more of understanding how young people were constructed in these spaces as needing protection in the ways that parents are deemed not responsible enough to actually protect their own children, that we needed this other form of intervention. I think policy would benefit a lot from listening to teachers in our school, listening to students, listening to researchers to understand what are the day-to-day experiences, what are the frustrations that they're actually facing. I mean, predators is not their number one problem at this school, and so actually understanding how they're using technology in these incredibly beneficial ways and the ways in which policies are shutting down a lot of these opportunities. I struggle anytime policy wants to chill technological progress. I mean, I don't think that's ever really the answer because all technologies can be used for good or bad, and so trying to just shut them down because of these negative issues misses so many of the positive ways. And what we're seeing with so many of our students is they're incredibly disenfranchised with school, the whole institute, and many of them have been failed in a lot of ways, not just at school, but a lot of the adult institutions put into place to protect them are failing. So they become, by the time they hit high school, many of them don't see the point of school. They don't see the point of what they're learning. Some of them know already what vocation they want to go into. They don't see school as helping them get there. Not all of them, but a lot of these students. But then when you start talking to them, they're really passionate about making films, or they're heavily invested in these online role-playing games, and they're learning these communication skills, these strategies. There's just this whole nother learning ecology that school tries to say, well, that's not real learning, or that's not valuable. And teens get this message over and over and over again, and so they start to see that what school values is not at all what they value. And I think we're at this very interesting moment in which some of the ways that teens are engaging with different technologies have such a learning potential, and that schools would really benefit to bring it in to validate teens' interest and figure out how we can actually use this to teach and for kids to learn. And ideally, I would like to keep working with a school and help that my research and other people's research would help shape policies, at least in some classroom and in some school, to help really incorporate technology in really constructive and productive ways into the classroom, in ways that do kind of close these inequities, not just digital inequities, but I do see some of these digital inequities, if we can close some of those, as providing at least one more possible pathway for students to find success.